Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear students. I am Engineer Shahad Muhammad, lecturer at Department of Civil Engineering, Comsats University, Islamabad, Sahiwal campus. Welcome you all to this lecture number 20 of subjects Mechanics of Solids 2. Our revision period has been exceeded and prolonged quite long, and now we should focus on our key and core areas of our topic. And as you are aware that in mechanics of solids you have studied mechanics of deformable body, and you studied deformation against many forces and stresses. So briefly, this was your introduction of different type of statical forces, and then we studied internal forces, stress and strain. And then you can revise your content about axial loading, and when members are loaded axially, there are compression and bending effects, compression and tensile effect, and torsion is a type of shear stresses, and then bending is a type of axial stresses or direct stresses, but they are on the same plane, different type of stresses. And then there is a case of combined loading, then when there are bending stresses and axial stresses and simultaneously applied on your system or body. Okay, today we will be studying stress transformation and failure theories, and in our upcoming lectures, 9 to 10 lectures, we will be covering this chapter. All right. This is our chapter number 17 of the book, and the goal of chapter and strain in the eye of beholder. We will define stresses on general surfaces. Stress transformation formulas we will derive and apply. Maximum and minimum stresses. So the output of stress transformation will be principal stresses, and that will be maximum and minimum stresses. And there is another graphical method of stress transformation, that is Mohr circle, and we will go through apply these stress transformation and Mohr circle on failure criteria, and deciding that when a material subjected to biaxial or triaxial loading will fail. Okay, failure for stresses in 3D objects, and 2D strain transformation and strain rosity, and fatigue. Fatigue is a special type of loading or stress generation in which your material can fail within your elastic limit. Then we will study stress concentration topic. Alright, stress transformation and failure. First, we will define stresses on an inclined surface. This is a brief overview of your chapter, and first we will define stresses on inclined surface, and we will focus on one point at which a combination of stresses, that is stress in x direction, stress in y direction, and shear stress in xy plane is found to act. You have studied that when there is uniaxial loading, then there can be uniaxial stresses. That can be compressive stresses, that can be tensile stresses, and if that is biaxial loading, then and that is direct loading, then there can be stresses in two direction, and even if there is biaxial loading or shear loading or any other type of loading, then there can be shear component too. Okay, whatever the case might be, your all objects are, when loaded, a unit element will look like this, a planar element will look like this. There will be only axial stresses in two direction and shear stresses, whatever case it might be. If that is bending case, if you dig down to element level, you will get this type of stress block, and we have gone through this in few problems that we have arrived at stress at some and we got this type of stress block. And if that is torsional stresses, then there will be only shear component, and if there is some combined loading, then there can be this type of stress components. Okay, to predict failure, this is 2D element and this is your 2D element too, but here at this phase there are no stresses visible, or they have not shown them. To predict failure under combination of stresses, we cannot simply add them. So if you are going to predict the failure, which is ultimate purpose of studying stress transformation, to predict the failure or to decide the failure criteria, so you cannot decide, you cannot just add them together and tell that okay, if your stresses are exceeding this limit, then your material will fail. Anyhow, we have to apply some different approach, because these are non-addable components. You cannot add different directional components because they are vectors. All right, we will follow the elongations and angle change for an element inclined at angle theta from x-axis. For illustration, consider only xy stresses. Okay, it states that first you have to consider that there is a block and it is loaded uniaxially, and with the due to loading condition, an external loading condition, this element block have rotated itself, and there is seen a change in theta, and only axial stresses are applied, no shear stresses. Okay, another the inclined element deforms into parallelogram, signaling that normal and shear stresses act on its surface. Another case is this, that your element start rotating and it deforms, and that deformation is change in shape, and that change in shape is due to shearing effect, and axial effect is also included. So both axial and shear components are available in this figure. On a surface of any inclination theta, stress in x direction, stress in y direction, and shear in xy plane, each produce normal stress and shear stress. Okay, all these components, if that is orientation, change in orientation, if that is axial loading in x direction, if that is axial loading in y direction, or if there is shear stresses in xy plane, shearing in xy plane, each will produce normal stress and shear stress. Each will produce normal stress and shear stress. We add the normal stresses due to all the three components. Okay, if there are normal stresses from these components, then we will add them together, and shear stresses due to all these three, and shear stresses we will combine them together in another formulation. So we will get two formulations, axial formulation and shear formulation. Alright, this is your general body, and we have taken an element, and you can see that there are axial stresses in x direction, stresses in y direction, and shear stress in xy plane. And this is the component level, that, and if you just break this to go from shear this, and you will get axial stress and shear stress. So these are your axial components, stress in x axis and stress in y axis. You will add them together to get the direct stress, normal stress. Okay, this one, and you will add the shear stresses together, and you will get the shear component. So this will simplify your this complex state of stress. Alright, got an overview that what we will be doing, that you will first apply basic fundamental principles of calculating stresses in an element using normal stresses, direct stresses, shear stresses, torsional stresses, and bending stresses formulas, and you will get element level stresses. When you get element level stresses, you will add the axial components, and you will get principal stresses, and if you add the shear component, you will get shear stresses. And later on we will derive equations for a plane on which principal stresses are applied and the plane on which shear stresses are applied. So very simple concept and very fascinating concept. All right. So in first unit we studied force and deformation at element level, and then unit 2 we went to some common deformation modes, that is axial loading and torsional and bending, the most common type of loadings. And in torsional there is shear stresses, and bending there is also axial, biaxial loading, almost biaxial bending, and several other cases you can visit. And now it is design against excessive deformation and material failure. We are here, we are standing here, and then there is buckling, some different concept. Alright, then we will determine maximum stresses and relate to failure. So I told you before that from these we will calculate the principal stresses and principal strains. So compare the normal and shear stress acting on different oriented surfaces theta. So we will compare that either normal stresses are more or shear stresses are more on different planes. So these are different planes at oriented at different angles. So find the orientation with the maximum shear stress and find the magnitude of maximum shear stress. So we will find the first orientation. Maximum, we will find the magnitude of maximum shear stress, and then we will find the orientation, the plane on which these maximum shear stresses are applied. Okay, second case is the normal stresses. Find the orientation theta with the maximum normal stress and find the magnitude of maximum normal stress. So this is your shear component. You will find the maximum shear stresses, and also you will have to find the application of these maximum shear stresses on the plane, that on which plane these maximum shear stresses are generated. Secondly, you have normal stresses, and you will calculate the maximum normal stresses, and you will also find on which plane these maximum normal stresses are being applied. Okay, when you have found this, maximum normal and shear stresses and their orientations depend only on the combination of stress x, stress y, and shear xy. So everything, if you are calculating maximum normal stresses and maximum shear stresses, whatever the case might be, they all depends on your combination of these unit stresses. So input, you are required to have these stresses, and you will generate or develop some formulas regarding calculation of maximum normal stresses and maximum shear stresses. And after the derivation, when you get the output, you will have to just put in these values of these stresses, and you will get the maximum normal stresses and maximum shear stresses. And you will have formulation to calculate the plane on which maximum normal stresses are being applied and the plane on which maximum shear stresses are being applied. So each material failure mode tends to be promoted by primarily shear and normal stresses. The basic functionality is this, that we have to decide when material is going to fail. Failure criteria based on loading conditions, and loading have effect on stresses. Loading against loading, there are generated resistance, and that resistance is called stresses. And we have to decide material will fail on which mode, that either they will fail on shear stresses or they will fail on normal stresses. Fascinating thing is this, that basically your materials are divided into two categories: ductile failure and brittle failure. And there are ductile materials which fail with ductile failure, and there are materials with brittle failure, and brittle material and they fail with brittle failure. The only difference between these materials is their behavior with respect to failure. When they are going to fail, Ductile material do show some ductility, means they do allow some deformation, and brittle material do not allow any deformation, and then they just fail. So ductile failure, plastic deformation is sensitive to shear stresses. So there can be shear stresses, they do resist shear stresses. Okay, and this brittle failure is sensitive to normal stresses. If normal stresses are exceeded, then they will fail. Predict brittle failure based on maximum normal stresses. So if you are going to calculate the failure or decide the failure criteria for brittle failure, then you have to calculate the maximum normal stresses. If you are going to calculate the failure of ductile material, then you are going to calculate the maximum shear stresses. This maximum shear stress will be governing criteria for ductile failure, and maximum normal stresses will decide the failure criteria for brittle material failure. Okay, these are the two categories of failure in your failure theories, that theories for ductile material, theory of failures for ductile materials, and theory of failure for brittle materials. Okay, let's overview the chapter outline. When multiple stresses act at the same point in the member, your member is subjected to multiple stresses. Judging failure requires special attention to how stresses combine. So if you are going to judge the failure, that there are multiple stresses applied on your material, and now you have to judge how these combined loadings will act, and how material will fail. If that was uniaxial case, then that uniaxial loading was the only failure criteria, that uniaxial stresses if exceed some yield stresses, then their material will fail, or if stresses exceed some fracture stresses, then material will fail, if that is ductile case or brittle case. But when your material is or member is subjected to combined loadings, there are multi-directional loadings and some shearing also, and some tension and some compression, and multi-axial compression or multi-axial tension, whatever the case, it is very harder for you to judge the failure criteria. And then we will to prepare for studying the effect of combination of stresses, we recognize that deformation, which clearly corresponds to a normal strain when viewed from one perspective, XY axis, involve both shear and normal strain when viewed from a different perspective. This one. So when combined stresses are applied, there are also some strain effects observed against these combined loadings, combined stresses. So we consequently define normal and shear stress acting across a plane of general orientation theta, not just across XY plane. So the thing is fascinating is this, that when combined loadings are applied, you never know on which plane there will be maximum stresses, on which angle, or if the orientation of which orientation of element should be at which angle, that maximum normal stresses and maximum shear stresses are obtained. So you will generate formula for a general theta, general orientation of the element, not just x and y axis, because you never know the orientation at which maximum stresses will be exhibited due to combined loadings. Okay, the shear and normal stresses acting on a general plane depends on its orientation on the stresses and XY plane. So when you will obtain the shear and normal stresses equations, and you will see that they are totally dependent on orientation of the plane. This is very important, that orientation of the plane is the basic criteria on which your equations are depending. In addition to those other stresses, okay, when plane of all orientations are considered and shear and normal stresses on certain planes are maximum and minimum. Okay, means when you have developed equations for calculation of maximum normal stresses and maximum shear stresses, what you will have to do, those equations are depending on some variables, and those variables do include some normal stresses components and some shear stresses components, and also some that orientation component theta. So when there is a theta, so by incorporation that normal stresses and normal that shear stresses, they are constant values, their values won't change. But okay, sorry, it was an announcement of namaz-e-janaza. Anyhow, what was the case? I was telling that you have one of our neighbors, an elderly person died. Okay, you have a case that your element is subjected to different type of stresses, okay, and that is resisting different type of stresses, subjected to different type of loading, and against those loading it is generating different type of stresses, that is axial stresses and shear stresses. So you will have to calculate the maximum normal stresses and maximum shear stresses, and they are depending on those stress components and also the orientation at which those stress components are applied. And the most fascinating thing is that orientation will keep on changing, and your values for maximum stresses and minimum stresses will change. So this states that when plane of all orientation are considered, if you are putting all the thetas in your equation and then normal shear and normal stresses, you will get the maximum normal stresses and minimum normal stresses, and maximum shear stresses and minimum shear stresses. An alternative graphical representation allows one to picture stresses on all planes as well as maximum and minimum stresses. This above approach is through equations, and that is through mathematics, and this is graphical approach. With the help of visuals, you will have to calculate maximum normal stresses and maximum shear stresses. Some students feel it easier to comprehend and understand maximum normal stresses and minimum stresses by stress transformation method, and few students are fascinated with this Mohr circle, which we will be discussing. This graphical representation of calculating maximum normal stresses and maximum shear stresses. Okay, brittle and ductile failure modes corresponds to whether normal or shear stresses maximized over all planes reach to critical value. Okay, this I am discussing this summary and overview. Do not be confused. We will just discuss them in detail. These are the units and these are the lessons, and we will be going deeper into them. This is fascinating that I have discussed that ductile material and brittle material. And we will jump to failure modes, that how material will fail. So there are two categories, ductile failure and brittle failure. If your material is failing due to shearing stresses, then that is ductile failure, and if that is failing due to normal stresses, then that is brittle failure. Strains in directions other than x and y can also be defined, and experimental measurements of strain acting along three directions are used to infer multiple components of stresses. So you have stated that stresses can be oriented at different directions and orientations, and similarly strains can also be oriented at different directions and orientations. Directions does not suggest orientation. This is important. Direction is along some axis and orientation is some along some plane. Understood? Okay, that's good. So we will be studying stress transformation. Okay, someone questions, okay, if there is some stress transformation, what about the strain transformation? Are there some equations or evaluations of strain oriented at different angles? The answer is yes. You are right. Strains can also be transformed at different orientations. Okay. Fatigue failure can occur due to stresses that are cycling, applied and released multiple times. So what is fatigue? You keep on applying some average stresses and apply and release and apply and release and apply and release, and even if the maximum stresses would not cause failure when applied steadily. So it states that fatigue failure can occur even if your maximum stresses are not exceeded yet, and your material will fail. Within your maximum ultimate stresses, material can fail. This is a special case due to repeated loading. This is the fascinating point. Repeated loading. There are two approaches. This is also an application in life that if you are if you water want to create a path for its movement, and there are hurdles and there are rocks, so one water will pour drop by drop, drop by drop, drop by drop, and a time will come that it will create a hole in a rock, a giant rock. Another approach is this, that a heavy deluge of water fall on some rock and it breaks it up and just start flowing. Two approaches. Just two approaches. One is slow and steady mode, one is instantaneous impact. Both works. Both works. Alright. Then we will study stresses can be elevated relative to the level studied in previous chapters. At sudden changes in cross section, these stresses concentration, which are particularly likely to lead to failure under fatigue loading, can often be computed from table of stress concentration factors. So in your whole book you have studied that there are stresses and normal stresses and shear stresses and bending stresses, whatever the case might be. But one case is this, that in reality your stresses are concentrated at some area. You cannot generalize those stresses at the whole area, and those will be average stresses and you will be just applying average stresses. But what about the reality, that stresses are concentrated and their effect is concentrated at some points rather than average? So you will be applying some multiplying factors, and we have discussed this in our previous lectures, that what about stress concentration concept. We will have to apply some multiple, that is k factor with your average stresses, if that is bending stresses formula or axial stresses formula. You have to apply that stress concentration factor, and that's it. So this will be our this is the brief overview content chapter outline, and very fascinating chapter. You will learn a lot. Alright, 7.1 goal of chapter and strain is in the eye of beholder. Let's discuss this one. As we have seen in our previous chapter, loads in many practical situations produce a combination of stresses. Yeah, stresses are only generated when when your members are subjected to loading conditions. If there are no loads, then member can still be in stress. How? How is it possible? Self-weight. Self-weight is also a load, and due to self-weight, stresses can also be generated. If there is a beam, an overhanging beam, and there is no load at all, the self-weight of the beam will subject the member in different stresses. Normal and shear stresses, or stresses acting on different planes or in different directions, cannot be simply be added. Okay, we discussed this in our previous lecture, that normal stresses and shear stresses. Normal stresses are mostly in, if unidirectional, then that is simple case. If that is multidirectional, then adding normal stresses together is not a simple act, or adding normal stresses and shear stresses together is not a formula. This cannot happen, because these are vectors, and vectors cannot, two different directional vectors cannot be added together. Still, we need to determine if failure occurs when these stresses act simultaneously. Here, your members are subjected to combined loading, and different stresses are generated, and stresses are the reason for which material fail. No matter how complex the loading, it produces a set of 3 2D and 6 3-dimensional stresses components at each point of the body. So it states that your stress matrix remains. If that is 2D, then it will produce 3 different sets of stresses, and if that is 3D, then that is 6 different sets of stresses. Okay, 3x3 matrix generally consists of 9 components, but as you can see that out of those 9 components, 3 are similar, so there are typically 6 different components generated in 3D solid body. Here are examples of loads that produces multiple stress components. A shaft under bending and twisting. This is a shaft, and it is subjected to bending and twisting. You can see that bending and twisting bending stresses can be shown with double arrows, and twisting can be shown by double arrows. Twisting, this is twisting, and this is bending. Okay, and hip implant subject to complex loading that is analyzed with finite elements. So this is hip bone, and this has been discretized with the help of finite elements, and this whole surface has been discretized into finite elements. In general, multiple stress components act at that point. So multiple stresses acts at different points, and here we show stresses on XY plane. And so we have taken one simple component from these members, and this is XY plane, to simplify our calculation. We want to know if these stresses cause failure. So we are interested in that if these bending stresses and torsional stresses are causing failure or not. So this is the stress block extracted from a loaded member subjected to combined loading. Shaft subjected to bending and torsion. I told you before that this is bending and this is torsion. And this is hip implant subject to complex loads analyzed by finite element analysis. So finite elements, and what will be the mesh size? This is mesh. So this depends on the user that who is discretizing the element. The finer the mesh, the more precise your values will be. Anyhow, even when there are only 3 stress components, this is stress X, stress Y, sigma X, sigma Y, and tau XY. It is not practical to determine failure experimentally for all possible combinations. This is interesting. But, there are 3 stresses. you might be worried that a point will be arising in your mind, and you are right that why we are not just experimenting and just relating that experimental results with theoretical calculations. The point is this, that universal testing machines and whatever testing machines you have, they are testing your experiments and conducting your experiments in unidirectional axis. They are applying loads on unidirectional axis. So there are no equipment available, or it is very difficult and totally impossible to design such an experiment that applies loads on multiple direction and is also able to measure the strains in all directions. So what we have done is this, that we generally conduct experiment in unidirection in different axes. If that is isometric member, then that's fine, then you can use those properties in all directions. And what you do is this, that you know some material properties from experiment, and what you do is this, that by using some analytical calculations, you calculate stresses due to different loadings. You apply torsion formula to calculate torsional stresses and bending stresses at this point, and when you obtain those stresses, I have told you before that this will be your summarized stress block. No matter which type of loading, you will have axial loads and shear stresses, axial stresses and shear stresses. The point of interest is this, that what we are doing is this, that now this cannot be conducted by experiment. Simple. It is infeasible to conduct measurements of the stresses to cause failure under multiple combination of normal and shear stresses. So it is impossible to conduct such an experiment that normal stresses are also applied and shear stresses are also applied. In fact, it is common only to measure failure properties in one state, typically uniaxial tension. I told you before that uniaxial tension or compression we conduct and then we apply those properties. How can we predict the tendency for failure under combination of stresses from only measurement under uniaxial tension? This is very important. That just conducting tensile test or compression test or flexure test and applying those failure ultimate stresses and deciding on those criteria that if your material crosses ultimate stress and that is failure, then that is totally impractical. You are going wrong. You are applying a uniaxial simple case on combined loading complex case. A simple solution cannot be applied on complex objects or bodies under loads. So what do we do? While forces at a point can be added, normal and shear stresses in an element cannot. Force is a different thing. Forces in same directions can be added. Stresses cannot be added. Even stresses in same direction can be added, but that different directions or different dimensions or planar and directed stresses cannot be added together. Shear stresses are planar stresses, remember, and axial stresses are, they are also applied on plane. Stresses are also applied on plane. All stresses are planar stresses. This is interesting. All stresses are planar stresses, unless you specify some stress concentration phenomena that is concentrated. But still on stress block, all stresses are planar stresses. They are applied on plane. This is the basic definition of stress. Stress is applied on, when force is applied on a plane, that is called stress. Alright. Even though stress has dimensions of force per area. Stress has dimensions of force per area, Newton per meter square. This is SI units. And if it is foot pound second FPS units or US customary units, you will have pound per inch square. Stress in is very different from a force beyond the normalization of area. Forces can be added together. Stresses is beyond normalization of area. Stresses are forces normalization. Nothing different. Stresses are force normalization with the help of area. Normalization is a term when you divide something with uniform quantity, that is called normalization. Normalized. Stress components give information on different forces per area that act on different phases. So stress components are applied on different phases. That's why we cannot add them together. Consider this example in which the stress components stress X and tau XY are positive in an element, but stress Y is equal to 0. This is the stress component, and there are stress X and there is no stress Y. Stress Y is 0, and there is tau XY shear stress. Each of stress X and tau XY, stress in X direction and shear stress in XY plane, corresponds to a collection of forces. These are the collection of forces. And stress in X direction corresponds to opposite normal force acting on left and right faces. This is opposite to this one, and this shear, this one, this clockwise shear is against this one and this one, anti-clockwise shear. So this element is in equilibrium. Your element should be in equilibrium. This is important. What should be the direction of this shear stresses? They should be joining in such a manner that your stress block is in equilibrium. You cannot just twist it around. Alright? Moreover, stress X corresponds to tau XY shear stresses in X and Y plane corresponds to shear force acting on all four faces. Those faces act horizontally or vertically depending on the face. So this is the X, this is the one face, this is another face, this is another face, this is another face. So shear component, shear stresses are applied on all the faces. Another interesting thing is this, that the direction of shear stresses is the direction in which the forces are applied. Okay, and overall this body should be in equilibrium. Here is the problem that arises when merely adding, if we were to add the numbers sigma x and tau xy, if you are adding this one, which stress components would that sum corresponds to? The question arises that what will be the output? What will it suggest? What would be the direction of the resulting forces and on which face they would act? So if you got a resultant, an imaginary number, and from adding stress in x direction and shear stresses in xy plane, and you have added them together and you have got some resultant, so on which plane they will be acting and in which direction they will be acting. In fact, we cannot make sense of that sum. This is important. Senseless things are never acceptable in science and mathematics. They don't make any sense. Okay, you have discarded this assumption that you are able to add them together. Moreover, so we do not add different stress components. Instead, we take a more general view of internal forces per area that also provides a mean of properly combining stress components. What we do, we take a general element and we divide that with the respective areas, and then we rotate them with the help of theta, and that is some general equation we get, and that is more relevant. To motivate a more general view of internal force per area, we first show the same deformation can appear to be either normal or shear strain, depending entirely on one's perspective. So depending on those stresses, we will decide that either normal strain will be developed or shear strain will be developed. That depends on case to case. Alright, let me turn off my fan. Fourth point. Describe the deformation of a body where the motions of 4 points are tracked. Now we are discussing strain, deformation. Okay, we have developed we have taken a general body, and there we have taken 4 different points. Consider a body under load. This body is under load, and the forces on a small region that deforms in the plane. 4 points A, B, C and D are labeled on the body. You can see the label A, B, C and D, and these points displays as the important thing about this is will deform and this points will displace. One important thing about this is this, that if this was engineering mechanics and this board, these points will not deform. That is rigid body. This is the definition of rigid body, that 2 points, distance between 2 points, 2 selected points do not change under loading. While in mechanics of solids or strength of material, bodies are deformable. By deformable we mean that these points do change their position. Alright, lines joining the points will be drawn and deformations of these lines will be considered. So we will join them some different lines, and we will consider the strain, the change in length, shortening or elongation, stretching, whatever the case might be. For 2 distinct deformations of this region, follow the displacement of these 4 points and what happens to various line segments connecting them. What we will be doing is this, that we have selected 4 points and we will join them together with different shapes, and we will keep on calculating that deformation. We will keep on observing the deformation in these measurements of the lengths. Okay, there are 2 conditions, deformation 1 and deformation 2, and how would you describe these 2 deformation pattern based only on the displacement of the points? Points have been displaced, nothing, no angular change, no shearing, just points have been displaced. So first point was here, and this C point have been shifted here, and D point have been shifted here, and A point was originally here, and now here A dash is here and B dash is here. So what do you suggest? What happened? Yes, any view? You are right. You are right. Extension. Body has extended. Length have extended. Second case, this one. Point A. Okay, here he has done little. Okay, you cannot say a mistake, but I think that it should have been darker color, black. Original position and new position. It says that original position was this and new position is also this, and If I were there, I would have colored it black, because original position is this, and A has not shifted anywhere, and B is this, and D have shifted here and C have shifted here. What do you suggest about this case? Translation is there, only translation, but there is also shearing. Shape has been changed. The angle, in sharing, the angle changes. You are right. So axial strain is different than shearing strain. Okay, let's move forward. Draw line segments AB. AB, we have joined them together. BC, we have joined them together, and DA, we have joined them together, aligned with the XY plane. They are aligned with the XY plane. XY plane is there, and follow them with each deformation. Now he is saying that I have developed lines. Now it is more visible, and these lines have deformed, and these are dotted lines. This one. This is original shape, dark lines, and this is deformed. So you are right that there is an extension, and this is the shearing. Okay, let's move forward. Draw line segments AC and BD. AC, we have joined A with C and B with D, oriented at 45 degree from XY. So they are oriented at 45 degree. You can see that if I move this coordinates to here, so they are oriented at 45 degree, and follow them with each deformation. So we have applied the same deformation, and B point have been joined with B dash have been joined with D dash. So you will have obtained this one, and you can see that there have been an extension in these lines. Lengths have changed. Okay, another one. This one original, and this is deformed. Shape has changed. Angle remain consistent. Here angle remain changed. 45 degree is 45, still 45 degree, and here it is changed. Okay, what he suggests? He writes that look at these four cases with line segments and ask which segment elongate normal strain. Elongate. If there is elongation, then that is called normal strain. Why normal? Strain is along some direction, normal to that plane. That plane has normally, perpendicularly extended, not parallelly extended, perpendicularly expanded in the direction of force that has been expanded. Does the angle between pair of the line segments change? In the first case, no. In the second case, yes. So this is normal strain, this is shear strain. You are right. For the same deformation, we observe lines or to change length or shear or both, depending on the orientations of lines. So from the same deformation, you can see that there can be normal strain, there can be shear strain, and there can be both. There can be both. You can see here. Here only angle change, length change, shear, both. For each of these two deformations, how we categorize the strain depends on which segment are followed. Segments aligned with XY, this one, aligned with XY, they are aligned with XY. Deformation 1 involves only normal strain. Yes, you are right. You told me before. Normal strain. Case 1, this one. Aligned case. Aligned with X and Y. Deformation is normal strain. Okay. Only along AB and CD. AB as extended and CD as extended. Deformation 2 involves only shear strain. This one. No segment elongates for small strain. Yeah, you are right that if strain was quite larger, then this direct dimension would have increased. But for smaller strains, smaller angles, small degree assumption, this will be the case of shear strain. Just shear strain. Okay. 5 degree. Deformation 1, these are the segments at 45 degree. Deformation 1 involves shear strain and normal strain. Okay. It states that change in shape and change in length occurred. Shearing and before angle was this one. If with the horizontal, if I make the horizontal axis here and here, angle was larger, and with the change in shape, angle reduced. So shearing with axial deformation. Deformation 2 involves no shear strain. This one. BD shortens and AC elongates. It will be a little harder to investigate. No harder, just you have to make an x-axis and you have to calculate the angle. If that angle is same, then there is no shear deformation. Simple. So he suggests that there is no shear strain and only involves elongation. So very interesting points. Neither way of drawing segments is better or preferred. So how are you going to really apply this concept? He says that neither way is better. But, Mr. But, for some deformation patterns, there may or may not be shear strain or normal strain. He have suggested very important thing that few cases can exist where there are no shear strains, and few cases can also exist where there are no normal strains, depending on how the segment is drawn. We need a way of describing strain and stress that accounts more fully for orientation. This is the important point. That we need such formulations that do incorporate the principles of orientation. Orientation really matters. So if you have equations such algorithms which have incorporated the theta within them, then those formulas can be applied on all the cases. So that's very interesting point, and this is end to 7.1. So in upcoming lecture we will come with more interesting stress transformation concept, and we will define stress on general surface. So thank you and Assalamu alaikum.